Hi, I'm Diane Jordan from Pleasant Hill United Methodist Church in Indian Land, South Carolina, and I'm so glad that you could join me this morning for my adult Sunday school lesson. Today I would like to share with you a reading from the Bible that was written by one of the wisest men and one of the wisest rulers that ever lived, King Solomon. It comes from the book of Ecclesiastes, and it's verses 1 through 8. So please join me for the reading of the Bible. There is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather them. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to search and a time to give up. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to mend. A time to be silent and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. These are the words of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. So as I was reading that, did you catch in line 5b? And it says, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. I think we're definitely in a time to refrain from embracing as we're living through this pandemic and this time of social distancing. As we've been in this time of social distancing and working and eating and just hanging out at home, we've been living a different life for the last several months. And this poem speaks to me because it talks about the ebb and flow of life. We're not guaranteed as Christians that it's going to be smooth sailing all the way through. And there definitely is an ebb and flow. We have times where we're going through really good times and times when we're going through really hard times. And even, unfortunately, there are times when we go through devastating times. As we've been being at home for these last months, we're in the end of July and we've been home since March now, it's given us an opportunity to kind of reevaluate our lives and what's important to us and some of the activities and things that we've been committed to that we've just done because we're always expected to do them. But maybe it's that season in our life when we need to let that go and do something different. John and I had fallen into a pattern of eating out a lot, just because life was busy, I'd be tired, and so we'd eat out. And these last several months, I've been cooking from home. I can't go out to eat, I can't sit in a restaurant, and I love to cook, I just haven't been doing it. And so, honestly, it's just easier to eat out. But anyways, these last few months I've been cooking from home and I've been trying new recipes, and some of them have been phenomenal and they will be family favorites for the rest of our lives. And I have to fess up and say that, yeah, one was so bad that even our dogs wouldn't have anything to do with it. But you know what? That's how you learn, right? So on a positive note, I've lost weight from eating healthier. Something that probably wouldn't have happened had I been not in this time of life. If you've got children at home with you, it might have not have slowed down this summer, but you've not had any virtual learning that you've had to be doing, any schoolwork. And so hopefully you've also been experiencing something in your life. Maybe you're showing movies on a sheet on the side of your garage and having an outdoor movie night with your families, or maybe you're sitting around a fire pit making s'mores. But it has forced us to slow down and sort of reevaluate some things in our life. And because I was a teacher, I usually use an academic year calendar that runs from August through July. And so I was sitting down and recording birth dates and anniversaries into my new calendar to begin using next month. And it gave me a chance to reflect about the events that were recorded on my old calendar. And it gave me a chance to reflect on some of the commitments that I have on my time and to decide what was just busyness and what did I truly enjoy. What did I truly enjoy and have a passion for doing? What of these activities have I been doing just as a matter of habit? And what do I want to continue doing? And how do I make that happen? Maybe there's something new that I've been wanting to do that I've never done. I'm terrified of horses. I would love to be able to get up on a horse and sit on a horse and take a ride and not be a nervous wreck. So that's one of my things on my list. I'm going to do that. Terry Fletcher Smith, I might be calling you. And so as I was looking and reevaluating things, I thought about one of my dear friends, Emily. Emily worked a full-time job while raising 2 children. She had a husband who traveled in her job, and she was one of my very, very wonderful neighbors that I lived next to in Orlando. And Emily did not like giving up an entire Saturday to all the chores of the household that we all have to do. Things like menu planning and grocery shopping and vacuuming and laundry and just all of those things. And so she and her husband sat down one evening and they sort of brainstormed and they came up with what I thought was a really awesome solution to their problem. She didn't hire a maid, by the way. They decided that on Friday nights they would grab pizzas on the way home and they would divvy up the chores and they would get everything done before they went to bed on Friday night. Now, as the kids got older, they were able to help out with things like vacuuming and sweeping and folding clothes and all. But they completed all of the work on Friday night. They usually went to bed around 1 in the morning, she said. And when they got up on Saturday, and they slept in a little bit, they'd sleep until 9:30. But when they got up on Saturday, they had all day Saturday and all day Sunday off to enjoy together as a family. And so I've reflected on a lot of things in our lives. And I think that this is a great time for us to do a lot of reflection because we do have it quieter right now. We aren't in the car so much. We aren't running here and there with kids to soccer and baseball and Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, all these wonderful organizations that I took all 3 of my kids to. But I think it gives us an opportunity to reflect and kind of look at what do we want to change about our lives. I am definitely going to be cooking and not eating out anymore so much. Anybody who knows me is going, yep, let me wait and see. But I love to cook and I love that we're eating healthier, and so I plan to continue that. We have been talking about the book, The Next Right Thing, for a few weeks, and I want to return to that book for a moment. The book is written by Emily P. Freeman, and she asked several questions at the end of chapter 10 in her book that I would like for you to consider this morning. Are you working towards something only to realize it isn't quite right anymore? And has your heart changed on an issue, but maybe your mind hasn't gotten the memo yet? I think we all have things that we do out of obligations that maybe we feel weird about releasing. We worry about disappointing somebody. There's nobody else that's going to do it if I don't do it. But sometimes we just have to release the obligation. As we heard in the poem, there is a time to let go. And so maybe you've always done something and you don't know how to quit. But there is an ebb and flow to life, and sometimes it's time for something else. So where are you at in your life? Is it something you've thought about? We need to know where we are to know where we are going. As I wrote things in that calendar, I thought about the next year and the coming year and what do I want that year to look like for myself, for my family? How many of us worry about events that are coming, and why do we let worry about a future event still our joy about living in today? Michael J. Fox, the actor, once said that he doesn't worry about things because if you've already lived through the worst case scenario in your mind and the worst case happens, then you've lived through it twice. But he also said that what he's learned in life is that the worst doesn't usually happen. So maybe you're facing another big event in your life. And of course, COVID-19 has negatively impacted how you see this event proceeding. This was a big year for my family. We had a family member turning 21, turning 30, and turning 60 this year. And we haven't been able to get together to celebrate because of COVID-19 when we were planning on really having a good party. But there's lots of things that have been impacted. And you may or may not be aware, but Princess Beatrice from England just had a small intimate wedding with 20 guests rather than the elaborate, huge media event weddings that her cousins and her sister had. She adapted to the situation, the impact of COVID, and she decided what was important, which was that she wanted to marry this man that she loved. And she got on with it. She had a small, intimate wedding with only 20 people. The ebb and flow of life. I once heard a quote from Alan Alda. He's an American actor and movie star. And he replied, when somebody asked him how he managed to have such a long and successful marriage, he said that love returns in waves. You just have to wait it out. And that definitely is what this poem in Ecclesiastes is talking about. There is an ebb and flow in life. And yes, this is a hard time, and it's hard to be separated. I miss all my church friends so much. And I miss getting together with friends, and I miss getting together with family. But it's not the worst. It's not as bad as it could be. It's an inconvenience. But we are so blessed that we have a home to live in, we have food on our table, we have clothes to wear, we have air conditioning, we have heat if this carries on into the winter months. We are truly blessed. I'd like to share with you an article about somebody who was born in 1900 and the experiences that they've lived through to kind of help you put some of this in perspective. And again, talking about the ebb and flow of life. For a small amount of perspective at this moment, imagine you were born in 1900. When you're 14 years old, World War I starts and ends on your 18th birthday with the loss of 22 million lives. Later in the year, a Spanish flu epidemic hits the planet and runs until you are 20. 50 million people die from it those 2 years. Yes, 50 million. When you're 29, the Great Depression begins. Unemployment hits a rate of 25%. Global GDP drops 27%, and that continues until you're 33 years old. The country nearly collapses along with the world economy. When you turn 39, World War II starts. You aren't even over the hill yet. When you're 41, the United States is pulled fully into World War II. Between your 39th and 45th birthday, 75 million people perish in the war, and the Holocaust kills 6 million. When you're 52 years old, the Korean War starts, and 5 million more perish. When you're 64, the Vietnam War begins, and it doesn't end for many years. 4 million people die in that conflict, and it tears the country apart. Approaching your 62nd birthday, you have the Cuban Missile Crisis, a tipping point in the Cold War. And anyone who lived through the Cuban Missile Crisis will tell you it was an agonizing time. Life on our planet as we know it could well have ended, and great leaders prevented that from happening. When you turn 75, the Vietnam War finally ends. Think of everyone on the planet born in 1900. How do you survive all of that? A kid in 1985 didn't think their 85-year-old grandparent understood how hard school was, yet those grandparents and now great-grandparents survived through everything listed above. Perspective is an amazing art. Let's try and keep things in perspective. Let's be smart, help each other out so we can get through this. In the history of the world, there has never been a storm that lasted, and this too shall pass. I'd like to remind us as we're living through this time of pandemic, and it is frightening. There is an illness out there, a very small little germ that is devastating, and it has devastated some families. It has devastated many families across our world. But I would like to ask you to remember to keep things in perspective during this time. Remember, the Lord is always with us. He takes your right hand and holds your right hand. You've just got to talk to him. And so I would like for us to talk to our Lord now. And as we end in our closing prayer, please join me in prayer. Father, help us to know where we are, and then help us to be where we are. Meet us in our weakness, our smallness, our exhaustion, our insecurity, and our questions. As we move forward in the midst of where we are, help us to believe you, even though we can't see you. Remind us to move at a walking pace. Let your peace rule within us. Quiet us in the midst of the chaos. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayer. Amen. And so my message today is I just hope that you will remember that there is an ebb and flow in life, and it has been going on since the time of King Solomon. I just pray for each and every one of you for your safety and your help. And I ask that you lift up our country and the world in prayer for some healing in our country with all of the issues that are going on, but also healing and a treatment, a vaccine for the coronavirus so that we can start to move forward in our lives. Thank you for joining me this morning. If you have any ideas of what you'd like me to speak about, please feel free to leave it in the comments section of this video. I enjoy doing the research, and I'd love to know from you what you would like me to talk about. Thank you for joining me today, and God bless you, everyone. Bye-bye.